Alright, so in the middle of QuakeCon, Quake II got a remaster courtesy of Night Dive Studios and Bethesda, and they released it on everything. And for those who already have it on PC through Steam or GOG, they get to have this for free. That didn't stop me from buying it for the Nintendo Switch, though, because $10 is a very gentle ask for the ability to play one of my comfort games while taking a shit. And in that respect, I have no regrets. But I do have notes, and we'll get to that. Oh boy, we will get to that. Quake 2 is probably better known for its deathmatch multiplayer than for its single-player, but the single-player campaign is no slouch, so much so that there's still people who haven't forgiven Quake 3 for not having one. But I'm not going to talk about multiplayer today because I can't think of anything interesting to say about it other than it's still good, and to me what this release brings to the table is a round of fresh meat. There is a lot of single-player content here. You've got Quake 2's campaign, you've got both of the expansion packs, The Reckoning and Ground Zero, you've got the N64 release of Quake 2's levels, and unlike how with Quake 64 on the Quake I Remaster, it's actually well worth your time because it's not just a stripped-down version of the PC game. Quake 2 on the N64 had a completely unique level set, except for a couple of tweaked and repurposed snippets, and the game originally had some features that the PC game didn't, like muzzle flashes, some new lighting effects, and Aubrey Hodges doing one of his specialty dark ambient soundtracks. It's actually running on an updated fork of the version of Quake 1 they used for Quake 64 because of difficulties getting the newer engine to run on the system, which is why the model animations look all choppy from the lack of interpolation. But wait! There's more! Call of the Machine! Returning Heavyweight Machine Games, developers of the Wolfenstein series ever since New Order, and who made Dimension of the Past for Quake 1's 20th anniversary and Dimension of the Machine for its remaster, have made a new 28-level campaign for Quake 2 in this release. And it is great! We'll get to that. And if you're an id Software history nerd, they include a bunch of DVD-style extras with concept art, demos from old trade shows, and design memos that this release is too much of a pussy to say the words Nazi Germany in. Like, they were talking about where they were getting inspiration for how the game's villains were supposed to look. That's not going to offend anybody whose feelings actually matter. You can also play some early levels that were left in an unfinished state from when the game was still in development, if that's a thing that you want to do to yourself. It's neat. There's the usual slew of updates to the game's visuals, like modern lighting and shadows, and optional higher polygon count models for enemies and weapons that jive really well with the original art style, and don't suffer from Quake 2's signature tweening wobble. And there's some quality of life changes to the game, like a compass that points you in the direction you're supposed to go. I'm not gonna call that an improvement, exactly, because it removes some of the skill from the game, but it's there for people who don't deserve to win. The objective button now gives you bullet time. And they also added hit markers, which I turn off, because your enemies bleed when shot! What does that accomplish? Did I get him? I'm not sure if I got him. How can I tell? This was definitely put together by people whose intention was to celebrate Quake 2, both as a piece of video game history, and also just as a game itself. You can tell when something is made with love, and it really shines through here. Now pretend that there's a smooth segue here to how they fucked up the AI. So the enemies in Quake 2 are kind of different now. There were apparently a whole bunch of planned behaviors for the enemy AI when the game was in development, and for one reason or another, a lot of them got cut. Well, this remaster put a bunch of those back in, and it really should have been optional. Most of these are fine. It makes things a little more challenging when your enemies can now dodge grenades and projectiles, and it's kind of impressive to see certain enemies jump down from higher ledges to pursue you. But there are times when these changes actually damage the experience, because the placement of enemies seems to have not changed. In the original game, you'd have rooms where you'd have some enemies placed up high in order to rain down suppressing fire from above, while you're dealing with enemies down on your level. And it meant that you had to pay attention to where those threats were, and make snap decisions based on where you had the best cover, or whether it was worth shifting your focus away from the enemies around you in order to take out the more persistent threats from above. But here they always jump down, even when, actually, especially when, it's tactically stupid to do that, removing the verticality and with it the challenge from a lot of these firefights. But most of this is still okay enough to actually play, as long as the fucking berserkers aren't around. The berserkers were originally a dirt simple enemy type, running at you and hitting you once they get to point blank. Kind of like the pinky demons from Doom. They're a touch on the spongy side, but you usually had a moment to process the situation once you see them. But now they've been given a leaping attack that homes in directly at you at insane ranges, which ends with an impact that can knock you into the air. This makes just one of these things a huge threat, but the placement of enemies in the campaign hasn't been changed to reflect this. It's at its worst in the N64 levels, because that game relied on those enemies more heavily, precisely because players originally were given plenty of time to react, to accommodate the slower and less precise aiming from using a joystick. So in those levels, the game will just dump berserkers on you and juggle you in the air until you die. That's not to say that the new AI behaviors have ruined these games, just that they've ruined parts of them. It's still pretty fun to play overall, but I think the option should have been there to turn these behaviors off, because they changed the experience just enough that I don't think it really represents Quake II at its best. This isn't chocolate chip anymore, we've gone into oatmeal raisin territory. Except when we're talking about Call of the Machine. Oh my god, these levels are good. And the complaints I have about the AI straight up don't apply here, because, they were designed for it. Machine games took the small seeds of nonlinearity that existed in the base game and kind of ran with it, creating huge, intricate levels full of winding corridors, secrets hidden off the beaten path, and combat arenas that range from tight, intense hallway firefights to epic outdoor battles set in wide open spaces, utilizing every enemy carefully so that the game is always challenging, but never unfair. It's far and away the best slice of Quake II single player that exists, and it's worth the $10 price tag all by itself. So, how do I feel about this whole thing? Well, it's kind of a mix. If you're on PC, this is a no-brainer. Buy this, if you've never played Quake II before. It includes the vanilla game, which you can launch separately, so you still get to play the game in its original form if you want. But unfortunately, on consoles, if you're looking for the genuine, historically accurate Quake II experience, this isn't it. At least not in single player. But if you don't care about that, and you just want, a good shooter to play, then shit, this is some of the best value you can get for your money, and it would almost be stupid to pass it up. Yeah, okay, I like that last take. Hopefully that convinces some more dumb motherfuckers to buy it so I can shred them in multiplayer.